Hello and welcome. I'm Elsie Burrows with the Travel and Tourism Research Association. TTRA unites the best and brightest in the travel and tourism industry. If you would like to learn more or become a member, please visit TTRA.com. Welcome to today's webinar, Destination Assets as a Part of the Travel Journey, presented by our TTRA partner, Future Partners. In this webinar, you'll learn what destination information is critical to potential travelers and travelers who are planning and booking their trips. Future Partners explores the value and importance of destination assets as part of the travel journey. Explore trends in how travelers use visitor centers, guides, and destination websites, and considerations for your marketing strategy while effectively catering to the evolving needs of visitors. Friendly reminder that we are using the Zoom webinar platform, so please drop your questions into the Q&A. We will try to answer as many of these questions as we can at the end of the session. It is my pleasure to introduce David Reichbach, VP of Development for Future Partners. David is a highly regarded information privacy attorney who received his JD from the University of San Francisco. David oversees the analysis, retention, and security of data collected in Future Partners' diverse research programs. With his BS in engineering, mathematics, and statistics from the University of California, Berkeley, David brings his specialization and skills to Future Partners' quantitative work, particularly in segmentation analysis and economic modeling. David is a frequent speaker on tourism insights at travel industry events and enjoys exploring the complexity of dark chocolate and red wine. Now I'll hand this over to David. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the intro, Elsie, and hello, TTRA. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of our most insightful data and analysis. For any of you who have not met me, my name is David Reichbach. I'm the VP of Development for Future Partners. Future Partners is a full-service creative insights firm. We are passionate about finding winning strategies that capture hearts, minds, and market share, providing opportunity to our over 200 destination partners, destination clients and their agency partners, powered by Insight. So for today, I'm going to give a brief industry update because I think whenever we're diving into any set of research, it's important to provide context around what's going on in the world so that we can all look at the data and insights from the same perspective. And then we'll dive into how we are currently looking at and analyzing official destination assets as part of the traveler journey, how they are impacting current traveler planning and inspiration, and ultimately how they're driving economic impact in your destination. Our industry update comes from the State of the American Traveler, and the latest data is coming from this most recent wave, our July presentation of findings. The State of the American Traveler is the longest running tracking survey of American traveler perceptions, motivations, and behaviors. We've been fielding this survey since 2006. We currently field monthly, and every month we talk to over 4,000 American travelers across the country, distributed evenly by the 4 major US Census regions. And the data is the freshest we have. It was collected right at the end of June. Our current July collection, because we collect every month, is actually still in field. So this is the hottest data that we have available to share. Starting with the industry update is top barriers. What are the biggest deterrents right now keeping American travelers from taking more trips than they otherwise would? It's all financial reasons. This has been the case since the huge inflation kick in 2022. Travel is too expensive right now, personal financial reasons, gasoline is too expensive, and airfare. When we look at that top response on travel is too expensive right now over time, we actually see that from 2022 into most of 2023, right before the holiday, it was heightened and staying really consistent and strong. And right around the holiday into the new year, it dropped a little bit. It is still the #1 deterrent to travel right now, but it's a really interesting trend to see just this one data point actually move in the right direction in a very subtle and at this point slow way. We'd love to see that drop much, much quicker, but obviously that's where we are. So in our recent waves of the State of the American Traveler, we decided to dive in a little bit more into this and try to understand what is the impact of cost right now on travel. We asked a number of questions in a recent wave on the impact of inflation, specifically on impacting short-term travel. We defined for American travelers what we mean by recent inflation in terms of the cost of living having gone up in the last couple of years, and asked about how recent inflation had been impacting their travel. Currently, 39.7% of American travelers say that inflation has had a major or extremely significant impact on their just sense of financial well being, even before we get to how that's impacting travel decisions. 50%, half of American travelers, say that due to recent inflation, they will be making changes to the way they plan, budget, or execute travel in the short term. When we ask that half of American travelers who say they will be impacted how much of an impact they're going to have, 41.9% say that the impact on their specifically summer travel plans will be major or extremely significant. Now, when we ask them what that means, what is the actual impact that those cost increases will impact in terms of their travel planning, their booking, etc., top response is that they'll be more likely to look for discounts and deals. That's not really abnormal for summer travel. That's something that we sort of expect in the travel vernacular, but now it's obviously at a higher rate. The things where we aren't expecting, where we're actually going to start feeling it as a different behavior that inflation is impacting amongst American travelers, is that they're more likely to travel closer to home, to stay in less expensive lodging options, to visit less expensive destinations overall. And that's very much a traveler perception. And then, most importantly and critically to the industry, just taking fewer trips overall. That's really where we're going to start feeling and have been feeling since the start of 2024, that kind of softening that we've all seen in a lot of our volume reporting. So, let's look forward. How optimistic are American travelers right now looking in to the future? Currently, 86.2% of American travelers report a heightened level of excitement for travel in the next 12 months, reporting a 6 to 10 on that 10-point scale. When we look at that over time, obviously, 2022 and previous to that were lower levels of excitement as we were still technically in pandemic recovery. I should say officially now we are always in pandemic recovery because it's never truly gone, which is a horrifying concept. But in terms of heightened levels of excitement to travel and optimism amongst American travelers since the beginning of 2003, that's been elevated and has continued to stay elevated into the new year. 1 year ago, our June data was at 8.2 out of 10, and this June, 8.1 out of 10. So staying really consistent, which is great to see. Currently, 33.6% of American travelers say that right now is a good time or very good time to spend on leisure travel, sort of in the short term. When we look at this particular metric over time, it has also been growing at a steady rate, a little bit slower again than we'd like to see that grow, but it's good to see that grow in a consistent way over time. 62% of American travelers say that travel spending will be a somewhat high or extremely high priority in that super short term in the next 3 months. And that's been shooting up dramatically since the start of the new year. So, really, really good place in terms of American optimism, traveler optimism, and financial security. In terms of their upcoming summer travel plans, over half expect to travel in the next 2 months, sort of rounding out the really strong summer of 2024. And their overall travel budgets are at one of the highest points that we've recorded in the last couple of years, significantly higher than the 30-month average. So, really good to see travelers are in a great position, optimistic, have the money. But again, with cost being the highest deterrent to travel, it's really going to be up to us as destination marketers to communicate the value that travelers are paying, why they should come to our destinations to begin with. So, to set the context on looking at destination assets and specifically how destination assets play in the universe of all the other things that are impacting traveler decisions, let's take a look at some of our data from the State of the American Traveler on just how to reach American travelers with different media channels. Currently, when we ask American travelers where they would be most receptive to learning about new destinations, to getting inspired, to seeing your destination marketing content, the top responses are your website, email, Facebook, and then from there it gets into kind of a second tier, other online content, other social channels like Instagram, review websites, and streaming video is really coming up very strong and has been strong for a while, which is related to, but we also measure separately, TikTok. When we look at that same data point by different generations, it's about what you would expect for some of these, but surprising for others. For Gen Z, we see Instagram and TikTok absolutely at the top, and then a bit of a barrier before we get to any sort of additional resources that they would be receptive on. Millennials and Gen X, you'll notice more of a kind of even trend downward. It's not a huge drop off between their top resources and what's following. For millennials, it's Facebook, followed by email, Instagram, websites, and other online content. For Gen X and baby boomers, we see websites and email as their top two, but baby boomers are actually, in terms of their resource consumption, acting more like Gen Z in terms of they have their top two, and then everything after that is a drop off. Gen X, however, is closer to that millennial. Um, way of consuming media, that there are just more channels, there's more diversity in terms of the different places that we're getting information. Currently, 4 in 10 travelers report relying on offline resources, non digital, um, in terms of both planning and inspiration. When we dive a little bit deeper into what those offline resources are, we're looking at travel and lifestyle magazines that are printed, free printed destination guidebooks, broadcast or streaming television programming, and traditional travel agents. In terms of the online or more digital content that American travelers are currently relying on for travel planning and inspiration, we're looking at mapping sites, OTAs, review websites, and then lots of video content. We test all of the different social channels in terms of American Traveler, both use just in general, and then also use specifically for travel planning and inspiration. Currently, American travelers are reporting Facebook as their most frequently used social channels, at 58% saying they use Facebook at least once a day, 42% YouTube, 36% Instagram, and about a quarter of American travelers using TikTok at least once per day. When we test that same list and ask about use specifically for travel planning, YouTube actually jumps to the top. YouTube is the most commonly used for travel planning and inspiration, beating out Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And 47.8% of American travelers have used at least one social channel for that purpose. So that kind of sets up our context from our American Traveler Tracker. And again, we do that monthly. So I'm going to have updates to this every single month that we'll be tracking. But that sets the context for how we're currently tracking official destination resources, answering the questions of how those resources play in the environment topography of all the different types of resources that travelers have available to them in terms of getting inspired and planning their trips, as well as taking it all the way to the end. What actual impact are these resources generating? Currently, a third of American travelers report using some official destination asset. 1 in 5 say they use an official destination website in the past 12 months to either plan or get inspired by travel. 14.9% say they use the official Visitor's Guide online version, 9.1% use the official Visitor's Guide printed version, and then 7% the official Visitor Information Center. We also have been tracking over time the official destination app, but so few destinations actually have a dedicated app, and very smaller proportions of American travelers say that they use them. So I'm going to be focusing on those top 4 segments: the American travelers that use the official destination website, the printed visitor guide, the online visitor guide, and the visitor information center. And we're going to be looking at some trends about how those travelers are maybe different or similar to non DMO asset users, the kind of rest of the American traveler population. Let's start with some demographic differences. Um, Very interestingly, all of the DMO asset users have higher levels of annual household income than their counterparts, the non-DMO resource user. Um, they also, I don't have a specific slide for this, but they are also significantly more likely to have higher levels of education. Um, they are more likely to be parents of school age children. They are Pretty evenly distributed amongst age, pretty evenly distributed as compared to the non-DMO asset user. There's not a huge age gap between one or the other. There's also not, which might be surprising to some, if you have stereotypes in your head about who's using your DMO assets. They're also not the pretty evenly distributed on both sides in terms of ethnic diversity. The DMO resource user is not necessarily more or less diverse than the non-asset user, and I thought that was an interesting similarity as well. In terms of their upcoming travel planning, the DMO asset users report significantly higher levels of maximum leisure travel budget for the next 12 months, where the non-DMO resource user is reporting just over $4,000 in terms of maximum travel budget in the next 12 months. The DMO digital visitor guide user reports the highest comparative at over 6,000. In terms of the expectation to travel more in the next 12 months, it is the DMO Visitor Guide print at 42%, followed by the people who use the visitor information centers. Similar trend with those who expect to spend more on travel in the next 12 months. Those printed visitor guides users definitely have that higher level of expectation. And of course, across the board, all of the DMO asset users have higher levels of expectations to both travel and spend than their non-DMO resource user counterparts. But that printed visitor guide user is definitely shining here in terms of future expectations, especially on this one, that now is a good time to spend money on travel. The DMO visitor guide user print is absolutely leading the way of the other DMO asset user groups. We have so much data, as you might imagine, on uh, different aspects of these groups, what other channels they're using in terms of social media, what other DMO assets they're using, how they're travel planning in terms of whether they fly, whether they cruise, whether they travel for special events, whether they travel with their pets. We've got so much data on each of these segments and way more that I could fit into a presentation like this. But if you have specific questions about any of these segments that I don't go into today, please reach out. We definitely have a data point for it, and I'd be happy to talk you through that. In terms of the overall audience size, the proportion of American travelers that use official DMO websites is the largest group. They historically, anywhere between a quarter and a fifth of American travelers have consistently reported relying on official destination websites and for both travel planning and inspiration. Second to them is the online visitor guide use, then followed by the print visitor guide and the visitor information center groups. And hold on, I'm just going to answer questions as they come in because I think that's more fun. I see a question come in from Tim. Thank you for the question, Tim. Do you think there's a correlation between people who use the printed visitor guide spending more because they have the guide in hand with them in destination? I actually do think there is a strong correlation with that. In just a little bit, I'm going to dive into a slightly different piece of research where we have been estimating and tracking the amount of economic impact generated in destination by travelers who specifically use DMO assets. We've tracked both use of DMO website and DMO printed visitor guide. And yes, absolutely, in our visitor guide study that we did, we found that because they had it in hand while in market, it continued to influence travel decisions, and not just the travel planning and inspiration pre-arrival, but also while in market. So definitely strong correlation there. And thank you for asking that question. Um, where was I? The reason why I'm showing you the sort of relative audience sizes is because I'm going to spend the next couple slides focusing specifically on the official destination website audience as they are the largest group. And there is really strong overlap between those who use websites and visitor guides. So it makes sense when comparing some more detailed metrics that have a little more granularity to look at the largest group in the bunch. So when we're comparing DMO website users to the non-DMO resource users, and this is specifically a question on in the past 12 months, what type of paid lodging have you used, right? Just to see if there's trends, that is a difference that we've noticed in our data. The DMO website user is not more likely than the non-DMO asset user to stay in a full service 3 or 4 star hotel. They're not more likely to stay in a budget hotel, but they are more likely in a statistically significant way to stay in luxury or 5 star resort properties. They're more likely to stay in peer-to-peer lodging. They're more likely to stay in a vacation home rental or a B&B, bed and breakfast inn, more um, boutique property type. I think that's really interesting, and there are, again, hundreds of additional data points on any of these segments on how they are different. So if you have burning questions, please throw them out. And if I don't know them off the top of my head, we can look them up for you. In terms of top travel motivations, why these travelers are getting out on the road and making travel decisions, the DMO website user is less likely than the non-DMO resource user to report visiting friends and relatives as a core motivation for their travel. It's still one of their top, but it's less likely than the average, which is an interesting difference. They are more likely than the non-DMO resource user to say that they're traveling to enjoy nature, for exploration, cultural experiences, and even experiences for personal growth or to share with their children. In terms of deterrence, the things that are keeping these travelers from getting out on the road. Again, I showed you in one of my first slides, top deterrents overall for the nation are cost related. But you'll see the DMO website user is actually less likely to report cost as a deterrent than the non DMO resource user. They are more likely to be deterred by weather, safety concerns, and the possibility of flight cancellations. And just as a like hoping we can all connect on a human level. If any of you were traveling last Friday and got their flight canceled, like I did, and it was absolutely hellish, I feel for you. You're not alone. If you needed a hug that day, I did too. Flight cancellations are absolutely horrible, and anyone who says that's not a deterrent to travel has not been in one. So, um, that little human moment aside, we can move on. But DMO website users are actually, yeah, they're thinking about these things. So again, I have way more data points on that as much as we could share, but I wanted to point out just from a high level, DMO website users are more likely to be excited to travel than the average, more likely to be actively planning travel in the last week. They're more likely to actually take more trips than the non DMO asset user. They're more likely to both shop and dine while in destination wherever they're visiting. They're more likely to do more activities, to spend more on lodging, and to feel more optimistic about their finances. And yes, Tim, if you're going to ask about the correlation on shopping and dining and doing more activities in destination, yes, there is a strong correlation between what is promoted on DMO websites and in DMO visitor guides and what ends up getting done by visitors who consume those assets. I mean, that's kind of marketing 101 is that when we put out information, it will actually be used. But the data supports those assumptions in a really validating way. And I'm going to jump through some of that research right now. As I've said, we've done a number of cooperative research programs over the years with both websites and visitor guides, not just studying how American travelers are using these assets to plan and get inspired, but actually measuring the impact in market in terms of dollars spent that are generated by these assets. I'm going to share some insights from the most recent one we did, which was our 2023 website user and conversion co-op research. By the way, we do these co-op studies all the time. If anyone wants more information on how to participate in these projects, please give me a shout out and I'm happy to share that. So again, the study that I'm going to be sharing is from last year, 2023. It was a 12-month study where we were on all of the different destinations on screen. They were all participating. We had a survey on their website that intercepted website users in the moment while they were on the site, asked them a bunch of questions about why they were on the site, what kind of content they were looking for, and then it led into all of the information that we learn on how they travel. There were two main objectives for the website conversion website user and conversion study. The first was to determine a website return on investment, so an actual dollar amount that their websites could take credit for generating in market in the local economy. The second was to develop a profile of who's on the website. Are they locals? Are they visitors? Are they meeting planners? Are they, other groups? Um, if they are potential visitors, what types of trips are they planning? How are they using the site? Are they finding it valuable? That sort of thing. In terms of the methodology, it is a dual survey approach that we did for this particular co-op piece of research. On screen, you'll see screenshots from some of the participating websites, and you'll notice in the bottom right corner a little pop-up, which was our survey element, designed to be clean and as least intrusive as possible into the user experience, to be branded as part of the website, and to ask really basic information about why they're on the site and whether we can follow up with them. We collected during their 12 months of study over 100,000 surveys from the website Intercept. And then on the website Intercept, we actually had people opt in to be followed up with after their intended month of travel. We collected over 7,500 completed follow up surveys in that effort. In that website user intercept survey, while they're still on the site using it for the first time, we want to understand their reason for visit, their point in the travel planning process, whether they had already decided to visit before coming to the website, or whether the website could actually influence their travel decision, whether what we call being at a point of potential influence by the site. And of course, then we ask their likely month of travel and an opt in to get the follow up. After their intended month of travel that they report to us, we send them the follow up survey and we measure whether they actually visited, actual travel behavior, what type of lodging they stayed in, how long they stayed, how much they spent, not just on lodging, but on restaurants and entertainment and sightseeing and all the other things that visitors to a destination can spend on. And then, of course, travel motivations, whether or not the website actually impacted their travel decisions. And then, in terms of our economic modeling process, whether we can say the website can take credit for generating that reported spend. The way that we do that is with two types of trips that we say the website can take credit for. Two types of spending, I should say. First is spending on trips generated by the site. So in this case, what we consider an incremental trip, a trip that would not have happened if not for the website. We say that when the website user was initially on the site, they were at a point of potential influence. They had not already decided to visit, and they report that right when they're on the site. Then, in their follow up survey, they have to say that not only was the website influential in their decision to visit the destination, but it was important or extremely important in the ultimate destination decision. At that point, we say, yes, the website can take credit for generating that trip, in meaning it can take credit for generating any spending on that trip. The second type is what we call a trip extended. Maybe you did already decide to visit before going to the website. Maybe you're going to that destination for a wedding or a business trip and you decide to go on the DMO website to see what there is to do. You get so inspired by the content that you extend your trip an extra day. We say that the website can take credit for that additional visitor day of spending. And any spending on those additional visitor days generated by the site, we include as part of the total ROI or economic impact. Let me give you just the high level summary of what we were able to measure from the 19 participating destination websites last year. We say that those websites all put together generated over 271,000 incremental trips, trips that would not have occurred without those destination websites being, owned and maintained and providing amazing and inspirational information. We say that the websites generated an additional 104 visitor days on trips extended. Because we know their lodging type and we know their length of stay, we were able to really easily estimate over 430,000 incremental room nights, hotel room nights, generated by the destination websites that participated in the study, leading to a total economic impact of over $398 million that otherwise would not have been spent that spended that these websites can take credit for generating. When we take that total big dollar amount and divide by what we consider the real new website users, the actual people on the site. We track that using GA4 or current iteration of Google Analytics. Um, and when we do that division, we estimated that uh, the participating websites in this co-op had an average of $42.45 generated in destination for every real new website user. Now, the word real there is one of our future partners colloquialisms. It means we take out anyone that is suspected to be a bot, anyone who's not really engaged in terms of GA4 metrics. We like to keep our user count as accurate as possible to make sure that we're actually counting real people. We've done this cooperative study a number of different times. The most recent time before this, the average economic impact per website user was $36.72, and we saw that increase last year in the most recent study. Now, as I said, there were 19 different destinations all participating in this research at the same time. We know that each of those destinations has very different levels and types of website traffic. And so comparing them apples to apples, we, in our economic modeling, use a hypothetical 1,000 website users. If 1,000 people came to the site, this is the number of trips that would be generated. This is the number of days they stay in market, the number of spending that they reported per day on average. And so we can start to do the math from a hypothetical even playing field on who's generating more or less trips, etc. And the only reason I'm showing you this level of detail is to say, although the industry averages that we're putting out publicly can be very useful, we strongly encourage doing this research on your own website to understand how your website audience might be different or unique from what we've been studying in our co-ops. Now let's jump in to some of the really interesting kind of marketing takeaways in terms of how users are actually using the site, what's influencing decisions outside of spending. When we measured the local versus non-local audience for the participating DMO websites in this study, about 30% or a third of the group were local. They self-identified as being from the destination on the site to either help visiting friends and relatives plan a trip or for other purposes. The other 70% non-local. 52% of visitors to the site were specifically gathering information for a trip, what we identify as potential visitors. There were some meeting and event planners, some market researchers, some travel agents, and journalists as well. Um, on the right side of the screen, point in the travel planning process, that's one of our core identifiers in terms of, does the website even have the potential to influence your travel decision? 54% of DMO website users had reported being already decided to visit the destination before they arrived on the site. 33% said that they were interested in visiting but hadn't yet made the decision, hadn't yet booked anything, for example. And 10% said they were just considering different destinations for a trip, higher up in what we consider the travel planning funnel. So that 43% of website users were at we consider a point of potential influence when they were first exposed to the website. We actually see that that changes based on device type. Those who access DMO websites on a mobile device are more likely to be higher up in the travel planning funnel, less likely to be already decided, whereas those who experience the site on a more traditional computing device, a laptop, desktop, even tablet experience, are more, rubber meets the road. They've already decided they're planning the fine details of their trip. Again, those people who are already decided can still be impacted by the site in terms of extending visitor days or even making other travel planning decisions. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. But it's that most valuable audience, those who are at a point of potential influence, because the website can really has an opportunity to convert them. 59% of website users said that they were planning a vacation for their intended trip, which they had not yet taken at this time, because remember, this is still reported while they're on the site. 23% planning a weekend getaway. They're planning an average of 3.8 days in market. And because this was a year-long study for all of 2023, we saw most travel expectation in the summer months. And then, of course, right at the end of the study, there was a spike in the upcoming year. Now let's jump into the follow up. So remember, people who take our intercept opt in to be contacted um, and take our follow up survey. 65% of those website users ended up visiting the destination and taking an average of 1.6 trips when we followed up with them. 49% ended up taking a vacation. And remember, they're reporting this after their intended month of visit. 18% reported taking a weekend getaway, 15% visiting friends and relatives. They ended up taking and reporting to us a 4.2 day, 3.5 night trip while in market, which is almost a whole day longer than they were originally planning on the site. Interesting correlation there. 51% reported staying in a hotel, motel, or inn in the destination. 14% some other home rental in destination. 10% private residence, what we would consider the visiting friends and relatives. Really strong amounts of spending from DMO website users who end up visiting a destination. We reported an average of $640 per travel party per day. That covered an average of 2.3 total people, so an average of $284 per person per day. DMO website users who end up visiting what their reported daily spend is. My two little gray up arrows there is to remind me to say that's significantly higher than the average visitors in these destinations. Now, again, 19 different destinations, all very different experiences. San Francisco travel, for example, I live in San Francisco, so I'm using them as a convenient example, was one of the participating destinations, and it is much more expensive to visit San Francisco than it is some of the other participating destinations. So this is average amongst them all. But in general, when we were looking at destination by destination results, the amount reported by visitors on spend who had used their website before arriving, even if the website wasn't taking credit for that spend. So this is just correlation. People who use websites and similarly, as Tim asked earlier, people who use visitor guides, people who use DMO assets end up reporting higher levels of spend on average than people who don't. And it's a correlation, but beautifully strong trend here, and really, I think, identifies the importance of why we put out our assets to begin with. Now, next comes kind of the heart and soul of our model when it comes to estimating the impact of DMO websites. So remember that in the intercept, while they're still on the site, we ask them the point in the travel planning process. And for those people who had not already decided to visit, for those people who were at a point of potential influence by the site, 71% of them said that yes, the website did impact their decision to visit. And then of those people who said yes, 60% said that the website ultimately was important or very important to the destination decision. In the context of all the other resources they have available, the website was significantly important in making the decision to visit. At that point, we say you're an incremental visitor. The website can take credit for generating your trip and therefore can take credit for generating all of the spending you already told us you had. On the other side of it, for those who the website can't take credit for the whole trip, we ask, did the website have an impact on your ultimate length of stay? Quarter of those people, 25%, said yes, it did impact my length of stay, and it increased my length of stay by an average of 2 days, 2 additional visitor days. For that group, it is only spending on the additional visitor days that we take into account and add to the overall ROI of a destination website. Now, destination websites can impact a lot more than spending decisions. So, even on trips where the website didn't necessarily impact the trip decision, 58% of website users who visited the destination said that the website actually influenced them to do more activities. 49% said the website influenced them to visit an attraction or a museum. And my labeling on this chart isn't clearly communicating this, but it's a specific attraction or museum. This is the value of having attraction listings on your site at all. 38% said that the website influenced them to visit a specific restaurant, to make a reservation. 29% to visit a certain neighborhood, region, or community, 18% to attend an event or performance, and right at the bottom of that chart, 15% said that the DMO website actually influenced their hotel choice. Now, I realize it's at the bottom of the chart, and you might be thinking, oh, 15% is not that much. Over 1 in 10 of all your website users who end up coming to the destination say that the website influenced their hotel choice. That's a really valuable data point to share with your hotel partners on the potential impact of your website on visitors' decisions and where they're going to choose to stay. I'm just going to kind of leave that one for a moment. Huge. In terms, when we asked website users who visited the destination what the most influential website content was, 81% said it was the attractions and things to do content, 50% said the dining and restaurants content, 36% the maps and transportation, 35% events, and 22%, so over 1 in 5, the lodging and hotels content was the most influential on the site. In terms of other destination resources used, and again, this very much tracks with what we're seeing in the State of the American Traveler. There is strong overlap between DMO website users and other DMO asset users. 44% of DMO website users also use the digital visitor guide. A quarter, 25%, also use the printed visitor guide, excuse me. 15% use official Facebook content, and 10% official destination videos on YouTube. My little gray arrow there is to show that YouTube content has actually shown significant growth um, in terms of website users reporting that they've also looked at that content and been influenced by it. So whatever you guys are all doing on YouTube, keep it up, because that growth is really, really inspiring. In terms of likelihood to recommend the website to other people planning a trip to the destination, the DMO websites that participated got an 8.6 out of 10 on the likelihood to recommend scale. That has grown since the last time we've done the study. And then in terms of descriptions of website content, 57%, so over half, said that the website gave them a sense of what it's like to visit the destination. Another 57% said that it was well organized. 42% said that it was detailed. 40% said comprehensive. 39% said it uncovered hidden gems. Now, the bottom half of this chart is where the opportunities are. You want, and it will impact how influential your website is. The strong correlation here. You want your website users who end up visiting your destination to say, the website was fun. The website was inspirational. The website was unique. There is definitely opportunity to grow those descriptions of website content. So keep that in mind when you are planning out the content for your destination website. As kind of my final data point here on DMO websites, I'm bringing in a stat back from our State of the American Traveler study. And we asked American travelers why. What are the reasons that you decided to use the destination's official website, either for planning or inspiration? The top two responses are the content is trustworthy and the website offers the specific travel information I need. I want that to kind of resonate for a moment. The content is trustworthy and it's exactly what I need. We track so many different types of resources that American travelers use. I personally have been fascinated and inspired by artificial intelligence and how it's impacting travel planning and the traveler journey. There are so many values adds why travelers love using AI based tools right now. It's easy and fast, it's free, it's personalized, it's at least has the perception of being really comprehensive and unbiased, even though we know that that's not exactly true. The one thing that never shows up on a reason they like using AI is trustworthiness. In fact, we are now actively studying and will continue to do up to the election how much skepticism American travelers have on AI generated results, especially around news stories and political content, but how that's going to eventually bleed in to what they think about AI generated travel content or entertainment content. Um, the huge strength point that all of you out there have right now is that you are trusted. You are a trusted resource. Double down on that because it is a strength that you need to capitalize on right away and measure the impact of, because it is significantly impactful, as I showed earlier, in the hundreds of millions of dollars impact. So, thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of our data on how destination assets are not just inspiring travelers and how they're being used in the travel landscape, but how they're actually making an impact in local communities. If there are any questions or additional details on any of the information I shared today, please reach out to me. I hope to have lots of great conversations. Thank you.
David, thank you so much. We'll take a moment. Are there any questions that we'd like to drop in the Q&A for the next few minutes here?
Shouldn't have called out Tim by name. I scared him away from asking more questions.
Right. Cindy says, great insights. Thank you. Well, you have David's contact information here on the screen. Nate says, thank you, David. David, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for joining today. If you have any future questions, of course, you're welcome to contact David. You can also reach out to TTRA. All TTRA members will receive free access to this recording in the coming days, and non-members are able to purchase this recording for $30. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.